I'm Julian Nish, the founder of Ukraine Unfiltered, an independent media NGO. And thank you today to Ukraine Media Centre for hosting this discussion. Today's discussion is about the role of independent media in Ukraine, the importance of, the critical importance of independent media to Ukraine's future, and indeed to Ukraine's survival, in countering Russian propaganda, rebuilding Ukraine and Ukraine's presence overseas. And one of the central questions is, in a time of Russian narratives predominating the overseas media space, how do we keep Ukraine in the news, and how do we keep Ukraine's critical messages at the forefront? Today I've got with me Yuri Sak, advisor to the Minister of Strategic Industries of Ukraine. I've got Lera Lauda, head of the local media development agency ABO, and Mr. Ihor Roskladai, deputy director of the Center of Democracy and Rule of Law. Thank you for joining us. So I thought we'd just structure this as a loose discussion, and I hope we can bounce some ideas off each other. But firstly, can we describe the independent media sector in Ukraine historically has been in a crisis situation, and this has been compounded by the full-scale invasion in the last 3 years. What can we do to support this situation and move forward and essentially rebuild and reconstruct? And the microphone's here.
Okay, history of Ukrainian media environment is quite very interesting, long, and quite differs from even our neighbors from Poland or Czechia or other countries. And we must understand that even on the beginning of independence, we had, for example, state broadcasting, not as entities, but as a part of executive branch of power. And this is very differs from other neighbors. If you're talking about for recent years, of course, problem with COVID affected, problem with full-scale invasion starting from war starting from 2014, for example, when all Ukrainian media was kicked off from Crimea, journalists was under repression, some of them in jail, even civic journalists like Irina Dolnilovich, she is in very bad condition now. And it's one stage, second stage, full-scale invasion, when we have situation that we have Russian jamming, Russian propaganda on occupied territories. We have lack of financial resources for local media, especially on Sumy region, Kharkiv, and so on. And of course, we have a problem with people because some staff of media companies was mobilized, and some specific professions, for example, was more male than female, and female started to teach, but we need again time for this. Also, we need to have more people in media. And of course, the last problem happened this year when USAID collapsed, and a lot of media, especially on this frontline region, survived because of grants, and this very affected them. That's why in this moment, and of course, Suspilny, for example, as a last independent broadcaster and media in Europe, created only in 2017, and since that time every year it was cut in financing, and still it's not financing on this minimum prescribed by law. And this picture shows that media under different threats, they're under risk, and of course not only now, but especially after war sometimes ended. We will have elections, and I think this period will be very dangerous for especially local media, local journalists, because I presume that these elections will be very tough, let's say.
Hi, my organization is working with local media around Ukraine in small and medium towns actually. And we started in 2017 when the process of this reform and transformation of media landscape was in process actually, because before the time a lot of local media outlets were financing by government actually, and after that they became independent. And what our organization done, we were helping them to go actually independent, to go digital, because a lot of them, for example, didn't have websites, etc., etc. Yeah. So during these almost 8 years, we are helping all this media, and we launched 45 local media outlets around Ukraine and helping them to operate still now. And actually, as Igor said, right now we have a lot of these local journalists and editors. There are people with their mission and ideas, but a lot of them already quit the profession because of lack of money, salaries, and safety reasons. But on the other hand, our goal is to help them actually to stay, because local media outlets they have actually crucial role for local communities, because they help people in different ways. And I have tens and tens examples when local media do really powerful things for communities. Of course, we have this lack of finance, and it's not really pleasure to understand that we are so dependent on actually different countries in this situation. But on the other hand, I think that we have, right now we have in Ukraine this really powerful culture of donations, okay, for the army, volunteers and victims of the war, but it could be a basement for the future of Ukrainian media outlets, because Ukrainian people right now know and understand that if we have some trusted media NGOs, they can do really powerful and important things for these local communities. And after you said stop these finance programs, a lot of Ukrainian media outlets, they started this like donation campaigns, community building process, but funding here, but it's a long-term actually process. And we are only on this start. For example, one of our media in Zhovti Vody is Dnipro Oblast. They started this campaign and started it, I think, in a great way, but 1 month and it's only around $200, so it's not enough money, but they started, yeah.
Thank you, colleagues. Very interesting for me to hear what the colleagues are saying, because I'm actually based in Kyiv, and most of the things I do are related to central media. And from where I see, the situation is, of course, independence of media is very directly linked with the funding issue, right? So, and I think one of the big issues for the Ukrainian media landscape, and that started a long time ago, is actually the trust of the people, and we have to continue on the path of eradicating articles that are used as, especially in light of the possible forthcoming elections. So media and independent media must not be weaponized, I think, in any of the divisive issues. Media have to be adaptable, and if you look at how the consumption of news, for example, cycle changes, that means every media to survive needs to be inventive and creative in the way they deliver content, in the way, and yes, it's all resource intensive. To create good content, you need funds, and then you need to go to social media. That will increase your readership base, but again, you know, for the time being, I think Ukraine is a country which has a great demand for independent, trusted news sources. We know that there are issues in the country to do with the objectivity of, for example, state-owned, like this Yedini Marathon, right? So there are debates whether that should be now changed, or you know, whether that is serving the function that the society needs. So I hope that the independent media of Ukraine will brave through this difficult period, especially in light of the cuts in the funding from the USAID, and but I hear that some media are already looking to substitute those sources of funds from the European sources, so that's probably a strategy for them. You know, a healthy society needs a healthy media landscape. I mean, that's the key to our survival, key to our success in the future.
Yeah, well, there's a point where basically democracy depends on a healthy media landscape. Ukraine's democracy, I guess that's a situation where then it's even heightened, especially with the threat of Russian propaganda conducting psychological warfare and information warfare, both internally in Ukraine and externally globally. And given any opportunity, it will set to divide and destroy Ukraine from within. How do we? This is more than a threat. I mean, it happens here on a daily basis, and even in the reporting of Russian attacks and the military situation. Are there some effective ways that can be combated and defended against? Which I guess comes to a clearer point of talking truth.
Okay, maybe I'll try to continue. First of all, we forgot to mention one very important specific point, because for many years Ukrainian internet, especially terrestrial internet, was artificially not developed because of monopoly. In 2015, we installed 3G, later very quickly 4G. Now 3G will be even switched off months in July, I suppose. But we see that since the time, the consumption of news and media and so on shifted from traditional media to mostly social networks, especially after 2019, especially after 2022 to Telegram. And this is also a very important point, because social media, it's companies which not represented, mostly not represented in Ukraine, and Ukraine has no effective instruments to control them, and we have only instrument to block or not to block, frankly speaking. And even European countries, European members of European Union, they also have a lot of problem with negotiations with these big tech platforms. And this is crucial, because most of the news flow from the social media, and most of the disinformation and all these campaigns flows in social media. The brilliant example is, of course, all these reels and shorts about mobilization. We see the huge amount of them, especially last year, because previously Russian Agency of Social Design, they use a lot Facebook for spreading propaganda via advertisement instruments, and they tried to spread different topics like Western support, some territorial, pretension from Romania or Poland to our neighbors, and so on. But finally they found that the topic of war, of mobilization, women mobilization, of the possible deportation people from European countries and so on, this is like the most popular and the most effective topics, and they did it a lot. Now what we see is that they continue work on doppelganger mechanism in European countries, and my colleagues who monitor in that segment, they told that they are still very effective. In Ukraine not, but in Ukraine they found this niche TikTok, and TikTok which flows to other social media, and they spread this all manipulated, mostly like it's called malinformation, not truth, but not totally false. And this is the biggest danger, that it's not false for 100%. And they use it a lot to manipulate people, to manipulate on emotions, and this is a huge risk. Of course, also we see a lot of technologies which is tested now in Ukraine on artificial intelligence. I mean, these cheap fakes, deep fakes, with popular people, especially TV hosts. A lot of TV hosts used now in fraud advertisement, and we negotiate with Meta, for example, that we need to do something, because it's really, it's not about even these products they advertise, because it's biological, this supplies, it's okay. But the problem is that they use this technology, they test and they make it very easy to create. And in election period, it could be really a threat, because all of presented people could be like saying something Nazi narrative. So everything the person want, and that's the case, and that's the threat we see. As for Western audiences, situation is quite different, because it's not a new story. It's not a story which started even 10, 20 years ago. It's story started maybe 100 years ago. And we see that this narrative, that this naiveness on Russia and imagination that if we kick off Putin, Russia will change to democracy, it's absolutely false narratives. But we understand that for Western people, it's very difficult to admit that Russia, it's not this elite which shifted to France or other countries on Bolsheviks uprising, but Russia is Russia, and every day Russian soldiers kill Ukrainians, rape and destroy civilians. They attack absolutely normal residential houses, and it's not Putin per se. It's Russians who admit it, and Russians who support this war, and that's the case. And I think that the biggest problem for us to beat this wall of imagination that Russia could change, because to my mind, for example, it's not possible. Only Russia must be released, all the states must be released from this false federation, but it's not popular topic, still not popular topic.
So as Igor said, we also understand that consumption of social media and short videos is increasing. Yeah, and that is why, you know, probably for last 1.5 years or maybe 2 years, we are trying to help our local media outlets partners to produce also much more content, the short video content actually. And it works because last summer we had like 3 months intensive program for them, and they produced more than 250 videos based mostly on local content, and they try to explain local people what is misinformation, mass information, different fraud schemes, and cyber securities. And it was funny because to one of our editor came a local police officer and said, "Oh, we are so grateful that you use these short video formats, because previously you produced a lot of articles and explained different these fraud situations, but people didn't read it probably, but your video is so popular." Yeah, so we try to help them to work on this format. And also what is important, these local media outlets and people in the field, they all the time they are monitoring situation in these communities on different publics and groups, local groups, and then when they see some not fake news, but actually misinformation or something like that, they try to explain, to get real information, to receive some comments from government, or etc., and it also helps. Yeah, so look, and national media, they couldn't work with all local communities because they have another one focus. Yeah, so that is also important to work with local journalists.
Well, Yuri, maybe you'll have a perspective then on taking local media to a wider global audience. I guess we're seeing, and there's a question in that of, is this something that is potentially necessary, and is this a limitation of overseas media? I mean, what we see in the news reports overseas presents Ukraine from a geopolitical viewpoint, but that's just one aspect, and there's this to report about in Ukraine. Is there some creative way or innovative way that bigger bridges can be built?
Well, first of all, I think that if you look at this issue through the eyes of the media consumer, you, I, people in the audience, we don't really distinguish as consumers of news. We don't distinguish, we don't even understand. Is this news coming from a local media, from a local Instagram blogger or TikTok blogger, or a central government-sponsored outlet, right? So for us, and I think that creates obstacle, or that's a healthy competition inside the media landscape, but a worthy content will always make its way to, in front of the eyes of the audiences in Ukraine as well as abroad. I mean, I've had so many requests, when something like, unfortunately, bad happens, for example, a missile strikes in Kryvyi Rih, another Ukrainian city, immediately you have global outlets contacting people like me, because I'm, involved in strategic communications on the government side, and they're asking us to provide them with contacts of local outlets in those parts of Ukraine, right? But that's for the time of war, hopefully that will end soon, and I think local media will again have to reinvent themselves, right? I think another important issue for local media, now we'll come to the overseas aspect in a moment, but we are seeing large movement of internally displaced people across Ukraine, and that in itself is a big socially explosive issue, because and it's for the local media to actually serve as that bridge that you're probably referring to, where it has to be a vehicle which sticks the newly formed demographical societies inside the regions. I come from Uzhhorod, from Zakarpatska Oblast. I know that Uzhhorod is now a different place, right? It's so many people came from Mariupol, Melitopol, Dnipro. I've just returned from Cherkasy, and Cherkasy apparently is now, in a good sense, invaded by people from Kharkiv, right? So they've relocated businesses, and all of these issues, they are new challenges for us as a society, and I think locally it is the function and honorable mission of local media, local independent media, to actually be the voice of local communities, be the voice of those who have just joined these communities, and to make sure that this new Ukraine, which we're seeing being formed, is socially cohesive, united, and they all work towards the same goal, a prosperous Ukraine. Now, as for the overseas aspect, I think overall, I don't think we have problems with the global media presence here in Ukraine. If you just step outside, every 10 meters you will bump into a foreign journalist from different countries, right? So, and I think Ukraine is, in a way, in addition to us having this war, this tragedy, which generates bad news on a daily basis, and that still is something that touches people's hearts across the world, we now have a very interesting new geopolitical setup, where we have a new administration in the White House that is just now celebrating 100 days, and every move of that administration with respect to Ukraine is in itself an event that generates global interest towards Ukraine. So in a way we are benefiting off that interest to the White House, and that kind of creates opportunities for us to amplify our voice, to use every opportunity to actually deliver these simple messages to audiences worldwide.
Yeah, I think you took a broad stroke there, and we've kind of been lucky that the recent political events and the US election, and now we're living in a post-Trump period that has highlighted Ukraine, that has encouraged a few more news crews to come here. Are there other ways that we can keep encouraging this? Because up until this point, there was a gap. I mean, obviously, there's not as many journalists here as there was at the beginning of the full-scale invasion. I mean, where it was a point of thousands of international journalists for those first 3 to 6 months here, and then that steadily declining to the point where even major global outlets cut their crew to 20% presence of what it was at those times. You know, to the point of then crews leaving Kyiv, leaving Ukraine, and coming in and out on a sporadic basis. Is there? Do you have some ideas on how we can, in that sense, I guess that's a question of transcending the news cycle. And are there ideas both on the international level and on the local level of whether that be types of stories or whether that be formats or platforms? Yeah, are there any ideas around these kind of thoughts?
We understand that talking about war for almost 3 years, it's quite difficult because even people here is tired. A lot of people not react on alerts because you can't live in stress for so long period of time. And I think that it must be some combination of hidden way of saying that war is still here, because some people in West countries sometimes war is still, they're really surprised. But I think we need to talk about Ukraine more because still we have a very Moscow-oriented view on this region in general. And to describe that, even for example, to using of such term as Soviet Russia, it must be something like to say slur words, because it's absolutely clearing of a huge amount of victims, for example, during Second World War. It's clear, it's imperialistic view on this region, frankly speaking. And I think that if we want to change something, we need to just saying about history more, maybe. We need to say about what is this region about, because in many cases, even I saw just a couple of days, I saw some documentary about role of social media, and they talk about Syria, they talk about Indonesia, I suppose, but nothing about Ukraine. But Ukraine is now, for many years already, is a laboratory of all this fraud activity. If you're talking about problem, why not to use this region to describe it? It's like nobody sees this region, frankly speaking, in some cases. And I think this is a problem that we need really, also in another event, our one famous person, Yaroslav Grisak, he told very important note that we need some a very famous person, but from Western countries, to tell about Ukraine to West. Because when our people trying to spread some information, okay, it could be useful, it could be very creative, much better picture, and so on and so on. But we also need some advocates in Western world to talk about us, because this information will flow more effective. It will be like unbiased view, because stories they telling that we are traumatized and so on and so on. We hear this, frankly speaking. And we need some advocates in different areas to talk about our culture, about our history, about current events, what's going on now, about our future. That, frankly speaking, this region could be a huge economic driver, not only for Ukraine, but for whole Europe, at least, because we understand that we will need to rebuild our cities. We can use some modern technologies and even experiment with some modern technologies like green cities and so on and so on. Why not? And this could be a topic for debates in architecture, in ecology, in healthcare and nature conservation and so on and so on. But we need advocates externally. Their voices must be more loud. Especially it must be academy, which is, I think, the biggest problem, the most problematic area, because academy still looks on us through Moscow glasses, and that's how we can combat disinformation. Because disinformation is effective, or because of very old narratives, and nobody wants to review, especially when you wrote a lot of articles, researches and so on, saying, sorry, I was wrong. Nobody want to be silly, frankly speaking. And another case, when countries don't know anything about Ukraine, and that's the case. That why Russian propaganda so effective, for example, in Latin America or in Africa or in other countries? Because Russia was there many times in Soviet time. Syria, Mali, and all these countries was under Soviet/Russian influence. And when you have Ukraine, what is about? And Russia invests more than $4 billion for propaganda this year, and this sum is absolutely astronomical for us. And we understand that to use a similar way how they do it, we have no resources. We need to be more creative, and we need to have support abroad from those countries. For example, just one blogger, like those guy who I was presented for him blog, a guy who talking about railroads in Britain, but not only, but invite him to Ukraine. Maybe it could be also a good idea, because he can tell about Ukraine, telling about trains, but he can also tell about Ukraine to his audience. And that's the way how we could combine this and to describe Ukraine from different bloggers, some very, very narrow specific audiences. But this is the way how in very natural way, not propaganda way, but very natural way to show that this country is interesting and we need to know more about it. That's my view.
Actually, this international advocacy is not my field of, because we are very locally here. But what I can add, actually every month we have requests from international journalists, and they ask them, could you actually give us contacts from people from Kyiv, Odessa, Sumy region, etc., etc., and we actually provide it. And a lot of them, they found contacts, by themselves without our help, because a lot of journalists, they visited actually Lviv, for example, in Sumy region, and other our media outlets, and our journalists, they are something like fixer for this journalist. Yeah, so I see this interest for situation, but again, we are too locally to talk it.
I will just add that on the one hand, it's a staggering figure. 4 billion. Just think about it. 4 billion Russia is spending on propaganda, and of course, that is 4 billion that is used, for troll factories, for funding research institutions from Washington D.C. to London, Paris, and Tokyo. And I had an opportunity to visit different countries on different continents, and it's amazing how you hear, for example, top people in Japan complain that Russian narratives are actually present in their media space, and you hear the same in New Zealand, and you hear the same in Australia, and you think to yourself, so this is where that 4 billion is going, because they are actually using, they are kings of propaganda, and it's no secret, right? They're good at it because they know how to package things in such a way that is very believable I mean, it's sufficient for even a critically minded person. You just sit and watch for half an hour Russian reporting, and you will find yourself thinking almost well, if not agreeing, then just questioning your own beliefs, and because that's how good they are, in inverted commas. But having said that, and I agree that we will never be able to compete financially with this huge allocation of resources by the Kremlin. Now, we have to think how to leverage AI, because I think AI could be a tool that will allow us to somehow beat them at this game in an asymmetrical way. And I know that in pretty much every sphere, from rocket building to healthcare, AI is now being used to achieve results which have been unthought of before. And I would like to probably hear the colleagues' view, whether there are any specific, because I'm from the other side of the aisle, I'm not on the media side of things, but is AI a way to, somehow redress that imbalance which Russia gets thanks to their funds?
It's not for public debate, but it's our used AI for some very good activities, let's say, but it's not for public, sorry. But as a content creation, it's very, it's like walking on a knife, because AI, it's about trust. And in some way, AI really helps. It could make some product cheaper when you need to recreate reconstruction or something like that. It could be, and it's used already for many media. But the other side of AI, we have this problem with this Church of God, this Chinese sect, which came to our region, not only for Ukraine, for different neighbors. And they use AI pictures to involve audience for themselves, and that's the bad way how to use AI. That's why AI, it's an instrument. It could be very useful. It could, for example, help to translate for many languages and to promote your product not only in English, but for example in Japan or in Arabic language and so on. South America, maybe even some Africa. But the other side, you must use this ethical. That's why we, in some way, Ukraine is pioneers on ethical code. We have self-regulation code on AI producer companies. They signed this code. And we help them to develop it. And this is very important, to use AI ethically, not to use it in the way of propaganda, because you undermine everything you do. It's the same situation when people use pictures of cats from some accidents in Vietnam for illustrate Kakhovska terrorist attack on Kakhovska Dam. That's the way that we can't step this red line. We need to be very careful, but we must use it if it helps us to distribute content all over the world. Yes, of course.
I wasn't expecting, to get into the AI question. It's amazing how rapidly it's coming to us. So it was, right on. A very interesting point.
Well, and actually, if we go one step further, I think every local media can have instantly an English version or a Spanish version of their website or Telegram channel, and that could feed into global sort of news stream and could be searchable by, I guess that's...
So there's the area of new tools on one hand, and there's a technical capacity there. So it's a different kind of pen, a different kind of broadcast mechanism. But then just in this last week, we're seeing Ukraine combating Russian influence in AI. And already that's become an information battle space where Russia is recruiting teams and attempting to influence AI with its narratives, to pose that to trying to influence AI to learn the Russian narratives, and for that to take primacy. Yeah. So how do we deal with? I mean, this has happened so quickly, and how do we deal with this in a sense of, again, asymmetrical warfare?
No, for Russian influence, if you mean of this Pravda campaign, which just a couple of days was an article about this network of pages which target for AI engines, and this is really a problem. And again, the answer is could be to more effectively work with algorithms of social engines, first of all. And I know that some media, especially regional media, they already know how to do it and how to put content that it will be quick in search results. When you Google something, you have results from this local media, and this is very important. But of course, again, nobody knows how algorithms work, frankly speaking, even people who work in these companies. And what I saw from my experience from this, especially since 2022, is that Russians try to find holes, some bugs, some vulnerabilities, and they looking how to flow in this algorithm mechanism to trespass them. And they do it. And they did it and also do it now. And that's why, in this case, it's some way our responsibility to, for example, alert to Meta and saying, hey, you have some problem with this. You need to look precisely what's going on and how they find this. And we secured, for example, some important media or NGO or initiatives because we see that they was under troll attack, and we understand how Russians imitate this fraud activity. But again, it's like a game of cat and mouse. Mouse find a hole, cat find a way, then again and again. It's a non-stopping process, frankly speaking. But again, as AI, for example, Suspin, they use AI for translate news of other Suspin public service media from Europe, and you can see this carousel of different news. You can read news from Czechia, from Estonia, from Spain, and so on. And it's also a way how it could work. It's not always a cheap way, because and also you need to have people who human review must be. You can't just translate. It's a journalist standard. You need to translate. Even you use AI to translate news, you need to check it, whether it's properly translated, whether it's accurate. And of course, it's a problem when you have a lot of multiple languages. You need people who know how to read it in French or po-svenska or another language. That's the question. But yes, these tools can help. But again, all what's going now, it's very similar to Cold War, when we have this competition of developing different weapons. Now we have competition of developing informational weapon. And sorry, more and more countries involved in this process. We see a lot of more and more conflicts appeared all over the world, and very difficult to predict. And today I read the news that we have first semi-biological computer on the market. And just to remind this picture of John Connor, who is looking how you speak with AI.
And this is mirroring robotic warfare in the kinetic war on the front lines.
Robots already used in front line for both for rescue services. For example, some robots helps to take people from the territory which is under attack and to help them rescue and to save their lives. But also we have some robots who are used, for example, for intelligence services, and it's already here. And a lot of questions related to source of the equipment. And for example, we wrote an article, I suppose 4 years ago, about problem of night vision cameras which installed in Ukraine. And night vision cameras, it's with AI built-in. And Houston, we have a problem because it's a question who have access, who can control code, who can control that this information from these cameras will be only under control, for example, of local power Ministry of Internal Affairs, or not flow to China. And that's also a question.
Okay, we've got time for 1 or 2 questions. You have a question? A question.
A question from the audience?
Yes.
I thought you wanted to put some more questions. Thank you very much. It's been a very interesting panel discussion. I'm Michael. I'm a politician from the state of Victoria in Australia. It's a very interesting perspective for me to hear all your valuable opinions on this subject and how we can continue to promote Ukraine, particularly in places like where I live. I'm curious, I think you, Igor, touched on the election in particular earlier, and it's become a bit of a theme today as well. One of the biggest, many differences between the good here and the evil in Russia is that we do have a free and open media here. How do you think that we protect that, or more to the point, how do you protect that as Ukrainians and ensure that the upcoming election, whenever that may be, will be as open and transparent as possible?
Maybe I start, but I think Lera also can take it. No, first of all, I'm looking on the recent history, what's going on with media in regions. Of course, it's very good to work on media in Kyiv or Lviv, on some bigger city, and much worse to work on more local cities when you have this very specific power which controls, for example, big factories or big production or numerous businesses. And incidents when, for example, some editors' cars was fired or beaten and so on, it's happened. And of course, after the war, we understand that the economic situation will be worse and people will be more vulnerable. It's a way for populism because some candidates, of course, will offer some, how we call grechka, some bribes, frankly speaking. And of course, journalists who will attack such candidates, they will under attack. No, it's my presumption. I want to be mistaken, but I'm sure that it will happen in some regions because of local culture, because of also, you can understand that, for example, people who will be very active, but at the same time vulnerable, for example, their flats or houses damaged, they need some support from local government or state government. They could be, for example, pressed in the way that they will not receive this assistance, or they will face some very long procedures with many, like this door, jump from one door to another door, and I think that's how it could be. And from this perspective, of course, first case, it's assistance for local media to have proper financing, and unfortunately donor financing for at least some period of time, because again, we need to understand that some territories have relocated businesses, they have no economic ground for media. But from another side, you need to have media to pass proper election, to pass proper power, to do something with the economy, to revitalize this territory. It's like a little bit snake eating its own tail. But what this situation happened with the USA, frankly speaking, it's a very bad case, because even some media receive some help, but again, it's not quick. European institutions, unfortunately, they are much longer in decision, all this process of decisions. And of course, one risk also related to these topics, it's money from, let's say, Russia or good Russians. Because we heard already some attempts that so-called good Russians want to support, but Russian language media, for example. And this is also a way how it could be affected in influence. And that's the situation we need to understand. And of course, foreign donors, if they, frankly speaking, don't want their money to be wasted for nothing, they need to understand that it's better to pay some assistance and to have this democracy, neither to do something like Sakartvelos scenario we have now. And just today I wrote my friends from Sakartvelo that police attacked another person and made these illegal activities, and we understand that it's also a scenario we can go. And that's why we need support. We need support both from a political way, like watchdogging what's going on, not to allow all these bad players to play bad games, but also it's some support to media environment, NGO and media per se, to survive and to help to pass as free elections as possible and as less populistic elections as possible. But you see that populism now again as 100 years ago playing all over the world.
Yeah, actually, it's a tricky situation because I don't like to be in this role of person who say all the time Ukrainian media outlets need money from foreigners because it's I hate it. But if we are talking about this local media news of frontline, there is no business. We have, for example, I don't know, I think really powerful examples in March. It happened in Kyiv, it's near the Sumy. They produced two very cool cases for local business, and this some reportages, etc. It really helped local businesses to survive during this last months. But they did it for free because their mission is to help local business somehow to survive. It's not for money. So and yeah. But what we will have a situation when on the one side we have this you said cut. It means that already local media outlets they cut the teams. I mean, if they have, I don't know, 5 or 4 people, that is really cool for local media. Right now they have 3 or 2 people or even 1 person left. On the second phase, I hope that European donors will launch some programs probably, I don't know, in September, October, maybe, because it's a long process. But it means that some of media will actually just close, I think, because a lot of them already are working as volunteers or almost volunteers. Yeah, so and they will do it for, I don't know, 2 months, maybe 3 months, but you can do it all the time. And then we have probably in some months these elections. And what could happen? I think that some local media could just say, okay, probably we will collect some of this money from politicians and publish some articles, etc., etc. But we understand that we will collect this money and then we will do a lot of great stuff for community after these terrible elections. I think that it's a wrong way, but a lot of them could use this. But what is also important, we have this new media law, and a lot of media outlets are already registered as official media. So, and it means that they need to mark all advertising, and it will make them more transparent, actually. And yeah, but
yes, I will just add that this is a very important issue because if you look at the composition of the foreign financial aid that Ukraine receives, of course, it's probably will sound stupid, but it's more sexy to give money to buy howitzers or tanks or like military-related stuff, and supporting civil society and free journalism. That's not something that you can sort of go to a party and tell your mates, I supported this independent outlet in Zhytomyr or Bila Tserkva, right? But it is equally important because if and of course our government cannot ask our foreign partners to contribute financially to the development of independent media because it just there's no connect there. So I think it's a matter of people like yourself understanding that this is important and then reaching out to organizations like the ones represented here, saying that, look, we understand that for Ukraine's future, it is important to support local media. We understand that you show us, for example, give us the list of key local media in different parts of Ukraine that are in need of funds. And I think now, with the advance of AI, a local media, for example, the staff could be reduced because there's so many things that can be done by AI that you don't actually need to have a bloated, organization with like tens of people. Or maybe I'm wrong.
You're wrong.
Lera's about to disagree.
a little bit,
All right,
sorry.
well, I'm happy to be corrected, but my main point is that financial contribution to this sphere is just as important as contributing to Ukraine's military efforts.
Yeah, actually about AI, they already use it, of course, for search optimization, and a lot of some routine tasks. But local media, and it really helps to reduce some expenses, but local media really need people, because you need to go to different villages, etc., and you need people for it. Yeah, so, but it helps, okay. And I also agree that, yeah, this approach, when we have some people who could advocate these local media issues, it's important, because general local media outlet needs, I don't know, only $2,000 or $3,000 per month to exist and to do the work. It's not a huge amount of money, actually, but for this local media, it's a huge amount of money if you are trying to find it on the ground here. So.
Yeah. Okay, thank you, everyone. Just very, very quickly, any other closing thoughts?
No, frankly speaking, we all faced for new technologies, new, let's say, new threats and new challenges of this I can say which is post era, but what we see is that we really need to somewhere remind about values and proper journalism, because sometimes we see absolutely strange, let's say, articles in New York Times, for example, or such type of media. We also need to understand that even we have this flow of information and nobody will stop it in social media, but the value of proper journalism is growing. And I absolutely believe that journalism, if you want to be effective, if you want to be an object but a subject, as a human, as a citizen and so on, you need to have a proper media. That's why as this crisis of free flow of information, which appeared as an internet appeared and so on, it will change. And as now very popular, quite expensive to use these audio plates, it's not so cheap now. And media also must be something payable and responsible, of course. And sorry, but no AI will replace person.
No, I'm not saying that,
It will help, of course. It will help. It will big data. We have a lot of good media which work with big data, with analysis of, as for example, ecology, consumption, procurement, and so on. And of course, but again, it's also need to be paid, because all subscribers for these models cost money. But what we also need, we need some joint efforts on negotiation with big tech, because this situation is absolutely bad. For example, what we saw in Ukraine, that satire is under huge censorship from big tech, and I understand why. But again, we have a problem that satire we had so many decisions of European Court of Human Rights about the role of satire, especially in political debates, and now some very easy, understandable for Ukrainian satirical pages about Prigozhin, no Stalin, no Putin, no everything, this content is deleted. Sorry guys, but you affected freedom of speech. And if freedom of speech is under threat, because the role of these big tech players is so huge, and there is no effective control, any single country can beat this. We need some international efforts, and even this legislation passed by European Union, it's not enough, because we can't give freedom of speech to be decided by very big, very influential, but private players, and that's the case.
Actually,
Please go ahead, Lera.
Actually, yeah, Facebook blocked probably five pages of 5 local media outlets during, I don't know, last months, and one of this media just we can't, restore it, and they needed just to start new one page. So yeah, it's bad thing. And in 2022, we had actually a lot of money for media, local media, and media in general, and we also understood that it's something temporary because of the war in the first year, etc., etc. But you know, this a lot of media, they for the first time probably received these sources, and it was incredible because they done really great work. They started to do something that they couldn't previously, and I understood in 2022 and 2023 that Ukrainian media and journalists, they are really high professional and they have so great potential, but lack of sources, it's something that...
Okay. Ihor Roskladai, Lera Lauda, Yuri Sak. Thank you.
Thank you.